Hey, Scott from roostedcob.com here.
And Seth from mywieneryourmouth.com.
And together, along with you.com, the three of us, we are markwoodmensbreakfastclub.com. And welcome back once again. Hey, it's episode 299.
Yeah, I have
You know
heard
what
that
that
rumor.
means?
Means next week is my last episode.
That's right. So we're looking for someone we can adopt to be a Markwood. So if you're interested in applying, yeah, did you see that? Look at what that did.
Yeah.
That is just absolutely incredible, that goop. So, hey, I don't know that I told you what I've encountered with that dang pellet smoker.
You told me. Oh no, I'm losing my other magnets. Oh man. The magnets are trying to get to each other. Sorry. You told me that you had an error that you found it was all filled up with gunk because the auger wasn't working or something. Tell me again.
So
Tell them what happened.
Well, no, I mentioned here, I think last week, maybe the week before.
Nope.
Could have been the week before that.
Nope. It was at Chinese yesterday. We didn't talk about it here at all.
Okay. So
The week before that was grilled cheese sandwiches.
that's true. I have a pellet smoker. Wonderful thing. I've had it for 3 years. Never a problem. The lid on the hopper that holds the pellets is not the best design, and so I put heavy-duty aluminum foil over the whole exterior where the lid is a portion of it. So the lid is inside of the top instead of the entire top being hinged, as they make them today, by the way. Since mine was produced, they changed their design. So no big deal. End of the day, I just put some aluminum foil over that, and then usually I throw a cover over the whole thing. No problem at all. So I go to start this up 2 weeks ago, and nothing happened. And I go out and double check, and it's trying to start. I start it again, doesn't start. So I take all the interior components out, and there are no fresh pellets in the hopper, which is where they like a little crucible. And so I check. There's pellets in the auger, but the auger is not turning. So you got this big hopper and this auger that spins and pushes the pellets into this little crucible where there's a little hot plug that heats up during startup, gets those pellets smoldering. There's air blowing on it, and away we go. So I went to the Camp Chef website, and they actually have a pretty good video explaining how to do it.
And that's the manufacturer.
The manufacturer is Camp Chef,
Yeah.
but the video is on YouTube as a private video, so you can only get to it
Like
through
from the website
their through their service website. It's a shame that they do that, but I guess they don't want to imply that you're probably going to have these maintenance issues. Well, I did. So basically, you disconnect the hopper with 6 screws. You take the hopper off.
Mm-hmm.
That exposes 2 motors. One motor that drives the auger, a second motor that blows air in along that same tube as the pellets, and that leads directly into that crucible. Crucible. So I go to take this thing off, and things are going okay. There's some wires that it's suspended from, so you got to disconnect wires real quick before you set it down. So as I'm starting to reach in and unplug these, I find this wasp nest this big that had at least a dozen wasps going crazy up inside of this thing.
Oh.
They were not happy with me.
I bet not. Did not hear about this.
And my presence. So thank goodness we had just recently bought some wasp and hornet spray.
Yeah.
So from the back door of the patio here, 10 feet away, I sprayed these guys. And then for the next hour, sprayed them as they came back. Many more were coming back in. So there was a lot of wasps. Surprising number of them.
Have you seen the videos of the men that just crush the wasp nest with their hands?
No.
There are some that do it poorly and end up getting stung real bad. And there are some that do it just very calmly. Basically, from what I have gathered, if you go slow enough, they're not really perceiving you as a threat, and you can get all the way close and just crumble the nest.
The pupas.
Crumble the nest with your hands, and they'll go away.
Well, these aren't going away. They're going to the ground.
Right.
It's fun because the ones that you can hit midair, they just drop. That stuff attacks their nervous system and puts them to the ground. So anyway, I got that, and then I go to pull the auger out, because what you basically have to do is take a motor off, grab a hold of the auger, rotate it a little bit with a pair of vice grips, tap on the end with a mallet. Basically, you're driving it in and driving it out a little bit until you break up that clump. And that particle board, or those pellets, when they get wet, they expand, and that whole thing was like a tube of particle board with a big old steel auger trapped inside of it. So anyway, I finally got the thing loose, only to realize that a shear pin, that is what connects the motor to that shaft, was sheared. It did its job. It kept the motor from being destroyed. So now it's Sunday night, and I'm driving all over the place. It's Sunday. What time was it? It was not quite 7 p.m. So we hit a Harbor Freight, a Lowe's, and a Home Depot before we were finally able to find a grade 2. And it turns out it's an M3 metric cap screw and lock nut. So these are teeny weeny little parts, about 1/8 of an inch in diameter. And they Harbor Freight didn't have anything like of that sort in that length anyway. And that big assortment I bought didn't have anything that small a diameter in that length.
Yeah.
The length was about 20 millimeters. An inch is 25.4 millimeters, so almost an inch long. For that diameter, that's pretty long little bolt. And while Lowe's had them in stainless steel in grade 8, you don't want a high grade.
Great.
You don't want a high grade as a shear point, because it won't shear, and then something else will break. The motor will get damaged.
All right. So how does 8 compare?
So when you look at the head of a bolt, let's say it's a hex bolt with a that you'd put a wrench on, because there's not enough room for all the markings on there. You basically add 2 to however many markings you see. So if the head of the bolt is plain, you can assume it's a grade 2 bolt.
Okay.
If it's got 3 markings, it's a grade 5, and if it has 6, it's a grade 8.
Okay.
So grade 8 is about as strong as you're ever going to get. You're not going to get a failure. You're going to break a casting that you're tightening a grade 8 bolt against.
Right.
Grade 5, depending upon what you're attaching to, maybe the bolt will fail. Maybe it won't. Probably shouldn't fail. Grade 2 you use in those places where the part that you're attaching is more expensive than the bolt, and you don't want to break the casting. So in this case, they were using it as a shear pin. There's other pins that you can buy, but they are larger than the space provided. So that's what I needed.
We have one of our products intentionally uses a plastic washer and nut combo. And on a part where you would expect a metal washer and nut. And we have to explain to people all the time that the reason for that is that washer and nut connects to a bracket that, if over tightened, can cause damage to the bracket, creating an odor point. And so we create the washer nut combo as a plastic piece, as a sacrificial part for that very reason.
When I worked at Shopsmith, the engineering that went into determining where the weak links were, where weak links should be, that coupling, that Zytel plastic coupling that you power a bandsaw or a belt sander off of the power plant, the headstock, that is designed to fail, because if it doesn't fail, then a very expensive part might fail, or at a point where maybe you've hit a nail in the wood on the joiner, you didn't know it was there, it continues to pull that nail and possibly damages you and the joiner.
Same thing for your water heater. Water heater has a PRV, or pressure relief valve, which is designed to fail. So if you've ever gone in and seen your water heater is leaking out of that tube that sticks out and goes to the floor, that's on purpose. That means you have built up to either that piece has gone bad and has gone soft and needs to be replaced, or your tank has built up sediment and is becoming overpressurized. When a water heater becomes too overpressurized with no relief, it becomes a bomb. So get that fixed.
Well, it's like a ground fault interrupter. You know, you don't want to circumvent those things so that you can make your toast in the morning, because then something else might just catch fire.
That's right.
So anyway, I wasn't bothered by the fact that there was a shear pin, but boy, it would have been nice if, you know, there's the perfect time for a company to have a little compartment inside with a magnet and a shear pin. And when you go to the
probably had one.
instructions,
It probably shipped with an extra in the
not
plastic baggie.
it's not mentioned anywhere, but you know, that part was, you know, the bolt was 3 for 98 cents, and the lock nuts were 5 for 98 cents. So for $2, if I would have known that in advance, it's sort of like in my work, you know, we provide people with hinge installation machines for European style hinges, and they have 3 drill bits on them. One great big 35 millimeter diameter Forstner bit and 2 8 millimeter drill bits. And you've got this machine that costs, let's say, $3,000, and you're using it every day to install hinges on an assembly line. When's the best time to have a spare set of drill bits? It's not when somebody accidentally drills into something and damages the bits. It's now. Have that spare set ready to go.
Sure.
And I wish that had been disclosed somewhere. It would have been great advice to have that, because that's the only part that I could imagine on that, except for maybe a bus fuse, right? If there's a little glass tube and a fuse somewhere on that machine, that would be handy to have spare. Anyway, I got it all apart and was ready to get that in, and of course it starts to rain. So now I got to rush to stretch a garbage bag over all those components that are now exposed to all the rain, and I happen to have a handful of rare earth magnets, and so that garbage bag is currently affixed with 10 rare earth magnets.
Currently being still?
Yeah, currently being still. So right behind me on the shelf back here with that Wise cam is a drill and my
all of the other tools.
Yeah, my vice grips and some screwdrivers and things like that. I just want to get this done because I got stuff I want to smoke.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's fun to tackle something that I've never taken apart before, and if you're methodical about it and you pay attention as you take it apart, especially if you look at the manual and refer to some videos, the worst thing you're going to do is put it back the way you found it and need to call somebody to come take care of it. And I going back to the days when I was a clock repairman, I always loved getting a clock I'd never seen before, because it represented a new challenge. I also have scars on my hands. You probably can't see them, but I've got scars on my hands from Mainsprings that exploded in my hand on wind up 31-day Korean clock movements. The Koreans took an old 19th century brass American clock movement that was designed to run 8 days. And through some elfin magic, they made them run 31 days. So basically, they took the mainspring and ran a ridge down the length of the mainspring. So the mainspring looks kind of sort of to layman's like a tape measure. It's got a curve to it, but it's more of a curve in the middle of it. And as a result, they were able to get more tension on it.
Yeah.
And what was a normal, I was familiar with what kind of tension I was dealing with. I had one of those in a winder, and the thing just took off and just cut my hands to pieces. And the gears that they made, the brass gears, were maybe 2/3 of the thickness of the standard American brass. And so, therefore, all the teeth on it were very sharp. So it was like having a round Ginsu knife blade spinning in my hand, and a spring that, instead of like an American clock, the spring will open up like this, and that's it. Those springs want to go straight, and so they just crazy.
Speaking of taking
Bad memories. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Speaking of taking things apart, I upgraded my 3D printer last week.
Oh, good.
And
these were the parts that your friend gave you?
They were for my birthday in April. I've just gotten around to putting in there. And one of the pieces was replacing the motherboard in it. And to do that, I I don't have much experience with electronics. I don't. If I unplugged everything, I would have a heck of a time trying to figure out what the different things were and where they went on the motherboard. And so I was determined to do a one-to-one replacement, removing a wire, replacing it in the new motherboard where it goes. But because limited on wire length and limited on space, I wound up with a situation where the first motherboard ended up having to pivot like this so that I could get this one in and start moving these wires over. And by the time all was said and done, this one was practically upside down by the time I got the last wires, the wires over here on the far end, and then had to like force twist it into place. And so I know there are some wires that have crisscrossed over, that are all out of sorts.
And you're working with your big old man hands that struggle to plug things in. Oh, that's so frustrating.
It was tough, but when all was said and done, it works, and it's actually crazy. It's I was talking with a friend that got it for me, and I don't know enough to know how all of this works, but just by replacing parts on the motherboard, there are different chipsets on the motherboard that are physical changes to the hardware of the motherboard that translate into significantly physical changes of the rest of the machine, right? So the biggest change is that it allows for much greater control over the stepper motors.
Oh, sure.
And the stepper motors are everything, right? All of the cables, all of the up, down, forward, backwards are all powered with stepper motors.
Smaller increments of movement. And
much smaller and smoother increments. And so it has gone from a noisy machine to one that is whisper quiet, to the point that it's a little bit annoying because I don't know when it's done printing. So in the past, you could hear it stop. You could hear it stop. You can't hear it stop now because you can't hear it running. It is crazy.
You got to put an amplifier on it.
Or something, a bell or something. It's crazy. And then also updated a touchscreen interface. So those two big improvements are going to mean that I will be spending some more time with my 3D printer. And hopefully, I realized just the other day that I need to go ahead and get a jump on designing this year's Tobacco Advent.
You want to take a look at some of the old ones just to make sure you have them?
Well, there was only one old one. So actually, I found one in my car. I found one in my car tonight. Yeah.
So back when cars started getting computer chips for the first time years ago, they were important, but they weren't like super critical and complex. And so there were a number of aftermarket companies that you could buy basically a high performance chip, and it decrease your mileage, but could possibly increase your horsepower. And that was kind of fun, a way to soup up your engine by swapping out a chip. Now you do that and you'll destroy something in the car. But there was quite a little business going on back in the day when those were coming out. I really miss old simple cars. Our Chevy Nova, 1972 Chevy Nova, my old Volkswagen van, the 73 van. There just wasn't too much to them. It was like a lawnmower, And again, if you couldn't afford to pay someone to do it and you had a weekend, you could figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
Yeah.
I miss those days. I can't get my hands inside the engine compartment on the dang Honda Odyssey. And that takes a little something away from your sense of accomplishment, and that kind of feeds into, I think, a man's need for accomplishing tasks. And it used to be, we were a little more self-sufficient. And so it's funny, I think that's part of the draw to me of power tools, but power tools that are mostly mechanical, because, I can replace a bearing. I can, replace even a switch, but all the modern variable speed electronic stuff,
but that's
not exciting to me.
But I think that's something that comes with progress, or maybe progress isn't the right word, but comes with change. I mean, you think about power tools and
I do think about power tools.
and how frustrating and how foreign it would be to have to try to repair a power tool for somebody that was used to just sharpening their plane.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I work with engineers that are recently out of college, and they have no problem 3D printing new parts and soldering up motherboards and designing their own this and that software. And you know, I mean, we have our company's made the same different versions of the same product for the last 30 years, and over that time, it's gone from a predominantly mechanical product to one that now features many more digital elements to it. Going from something that was just a motor to now something that has a circuit board and electrical buttons, and you know, we get that comment a lot.
I'm not biased because I don't have all the skills that the old craftsmen had. However, when you learn how to tune a hand plane, what it takes to sharpen it, and how things have to be aligned to give you the performance you want, it so helps you understand how a jointer and a planer is supposed to work.
Sure.
And when you don't understand that, then you're just muscling your way through the wood, and you're not getting the results that you necessarily want. And so I do feel sorry for folks that don't get that history, and therefore they don't understand why the tools were designed the way they are, what forces in the natural material, the various components of a tool. So
But they can learn that without learning the history.
they could, but I'm saying that you have an advantage if you understand that evolution, because it makes it like a light bulb goes off over your head, or maybe it's a candle that, okay, so I see what this is trying to mechanize. If this thing couldn't spin because there's no motor and there's just a fixed blade, that fixed blade can't extend too far because it would take too big of a cut, and therefore the grain would cut. So a finer cut is going to give you a better finished result. And so, like when I run a board across a jointer, if I see the chips coming out of the dust chute and not into the dust collector, and I see the chips, or hear the sound of that cutter removing, I don't even have to look at the edge to know whether I'm getting a good edge or a damaged edge. So again, and I know that because I experienced that with the hand tools. Same thing true with lawnmower. You use a real type hand pushed lawnmower, and you not an old one that's all rusty that no one's used in 30 years, but one that is tuned up and bearings are lubricated and everything is sharp. They cut like a pair of scissors. I mean,
yeah, but you don't have to have experienced that to be better than the old timer at using the riding lawnmower. I mean, so I would say I had a similar conversation with my kids the other day. We're playing a video game, and this is a brand new video game none of us have played, and it's a modern game, and I knew that if we went down here, there would be a treasure.
Sure.
Right?
Because you understand gameplay.
And there's like, how did you know that? So because I know game design, I know this and that. But in another 2 years, he's going to be so much better than me at playing, Fortnite or whatever the games are that require quick movements and some of these other things.
Yeah. But I'll be building the stand that the TV goes on.
No, well, that's IKEA, because I want to make sure to have a stand for the TV to go on. See,
hey, you built the stand that our TV's on.
Yeah, I know. I saw a Reddit post about that. Somebody posted about the $300 nightstand that they made for their wife 4 years after telling her not to buy the $150 nightstand because I could make it cheaper. And then somebody at the top comment was something about, yeah, my wife doesn't have a lot of things that I could make for cheaper.
Yeah.
There were a lot of men that could relate to that.
I mean, that's true. That's true. I don't know that the goal should be cheaper. You're definitely going to end up with something better, even if you just go and buy a bunch of pine boards and do a halfway decent job of assembling the joinery. It may not look
halfway decent, though. You're making assumptions.
Yeah, I am.
You're making assumptions about halfway decent.
I tell you what, I see some of the projects that the Craig Jig people are pushing for pocket screws.
Heard of pocket holes.
Oh my gosh, are they overplaying that thing? And like Anna White in her website, Ann White, she's got everything that she makes, she screws together with pocket screws, and she doesn't seem to understand how joinery works. So there was a trash can, basically a cabinet with a door on the front, and you pull the door open and the trash can tilts out, right? Well, she made this front door out of wood that she joined together with pocket screws. So here's a top rail and the side stile. On doors, you have stiles and rails. The stiles always go the full length of the door, and the rails always go in between the two vertical stiles. Well, she put her rail on top of the stile and on the bottom of the stile. So basically, she now has screws going up into this thing here, and there's a handle on this piece. And so there's going to be flexing here on just the tip of two screws, right? Where if you go this direction, you got a much better mechanical advantage applying pressure this way against the screws. And so just a simple understanding of how doors are supposed to be designed and why they're made that way. You know, the door on your house, if you made the door this way and you put a hinge here, then this joint's going to fail as the weight of the door pries over on it. You know, this is stuff that was learned over thousands of years of construction, and all you have to do is look at your kitchen cabinet to see if your doors aren't falling apart, and if they are falling apart, some designer convinced somebody to make mitered doors. Miters are fine for picture frames, not for doors. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that there's something to be gained from taking a look at what the giants whose shoulders you're standing upon, what they knew, and why things evolved the way that they did.
Or there's also something to be gained, there's also something to be gained from learning it yourself, making mistakes and learning it yourself.
So, yeah, I know. I don't want to impose because, you know, I do think that there are people who are stifled because, sort of like the maker movement, these are people that just want to make this thing. They don't want to learn metallurgy. They want to hammer this piece of steel. Is this the right steel for me to hammer to make this thing I want to make, right? I get that. And there's really good money for those people that are willing to offer support for those do-it-yourselfers who just want to get the job done.
Right. That's what Harbor Freight's for.
What?
Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight is for the do-it-yourselfers that just want to get the job done. I mean, that's
like buying the same tool the next time that they need it.
That's exactly right. They're the one. Harbor Freight is for the Harbor Freight's for the people that want to buy the tool every time they need to use it.
There's a lot of people that do that'll build a home and then throw the tools on Craigslist, and the next time they go to build a home, they'll charge basically enough to get the tool, and then they sell them or even trade them at the pawn shop.
Yeah, I mean it is so what is that, consumeristic, but there's something to be said for just buying enough to get by and being okay with that.
Yeah.
If you're never going to do it again, never going to use it again, that's fine.
My first torque wrench was like that.
That's not my philosophy when it comes to things like toilet papers, but don't ever want to buy just enough to get by. But
I bought my first torque wrench at a store called Odd Lots. It's now called Big Lots.
I know it.
Originally Odd Lots.
I remember it.
And I never, ever, ever needed a torque wrench before, and to this day, I've never needed a torque wrench since. I gave it to somebody, but I needed to do something on my Volkswagen, and that was good enough. And I knew it would be good enough to get the 10 bolts tightened,
right?
And would at least get me closer to the actual torque that I needed than I could do by hand.
Right. Sometimes good enough is good enough.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, but. these people that build that design of that trash can better enjoy having made it because they'll be making another one in 2 years.
Sure.
Which is, we're back to IKEA, right? That's the niche that IKEA fills. People that, I could argue, well, that thing's not going to survive your next move, and you would argue, I want new furniture when I move.
And I have that, and we'll have it for 2 years, and I probably won't have the thing that you're going to build.
Yeah, I'm not waiting for that thing.
No.
Oh, that's great, son. Thank you for
you're welcome.
exposing
Just
my flaws.
beep, 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 with that bus. All right, that's enough.
Hey, what happens
tonight.
next week?
We celebrate the end of our channel, our 300th Mark Woodman's Breakfast Club episode, 300th and final video, or maybe not. Wouldn't you be surprised for 301? Where we will interview, or really just chat with my grandfather, Grandpa Markwood. Sometimes maybe my grandmother. She's creeping in on that a little bit, and just chatting.
All right, cool. So, I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, but we'll see you guys next week, and then may or may not see you after that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Make it a great week.
See ya.